keep your eyes closed no matter what you hear. You don't open them. You promise? Do you promise?
I promise.
You keep your eyes closed no matter what. You keep them closed. Okay. 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 Eyes closed. Get back in the car.
I saw Abigail in the window.
Hello, how are you out there in podcast land? It's great to be back. We had a little hiatus, but not too long. And Tim and I are back. This is David.
Hey, this is Tim.
Yeah, and we're glad to be back with you today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for listening, for liking us, and for sending us emails and doing all that fun stuff.
Yeah, subscribing,
Whatever, yeah.
following,
In whatever
thumbs upping,
in whatever app you choose
emoticoning.
to listen to. Yeah. How are you, Tim? How's it been going?
Oh, it's good. I've been great. Had well, we don't know when this is broadcasting, but we had a good Halloween, and we're into the next season.
Yeah, holiday seasons are around us,
Yeah.
so that's good. And you've been. I saw that you've been some Disneying because you are a Disneyite, so that was good, I guess.
Yeah, we went to Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party.
Oh my God!
I was very disappointed because I wanted it scary.
I'm sure you did. Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. It was pretty cool.
Well, good. I thought of you. I think I even texted you. I thought of you the other day because I saw an image online of like the Disney Christmas tree that had like a Mickey, Sorcerer's Apprentice topper and had a train set going through it that had the Contemporary and Epcot and everything, like a monorail. And so I thought of you. So.
Oh yeah, we own that.
Oh my God. You have drank
We
the
do.
Kool-Aid. Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got a little Contemporary that the monorail goes through. It's got the Astro Orbiter from Tomorrowland. It's got little Mickeys and little Donalds hanging out the windows of the monorail.
Well, and I had a project that took me to the yacht club, so I got to use the whole band for the first time ever. Shows you how long it's been since I've been to Disney. But that was odd to just spend money with your wrist and not sure really how much money you're spending anyway. So that was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I was excited when I saw you were at the yacht club. I love that place.
It was nice. It's a very pretty place.
Yeah.
So. And the location, like you said, is great. You can just you can just walk right over to Epcot if you want to, or it's got the whole lake front there. So that's a cool area.
You can walk to Hollywood Studios too from there.
Oh, neat. That I would
Yeah,
do.
so you can hit 2 parks on foot. So,
Cool.
and you can see Star Wars Land, or at
Uh-huh.
least glimpses of it from
Glimpses
behind the
of it.
fence.
Yeah, until
Yeah.
they open it. Is that next year? They're opening it in 19, we think?
I would think so. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And I think the what's that? Guardians of the Galaxy may be the following year, but they're already building it too.
Oh, like a
Yeah,
Marvel
Epcot.
World or something?
No, it's just a ride. They're turning Ellen's World of Energy or whatever that thing was at Epcot for so many years. They're turning it into a roller coaster that's Guardians themed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it's so big they can't hide it. It's kind of like Expedition Everest was. They couldn't hide it either.
Right. Because it's so
So,
tall and
yeah.
so huge. Same thing with, I think
Yeah.
I remember when they did Tower of Terror, because it was so large.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So now they know that I'm not only a horror nerd, I'm a Disney nerd too. We could go on and on
Yes.
and on.
We've
So,
increased your fan base by like double. Now you're.
yeah. Yeah, I'll put Disney tags on there.
There you go.
Click here.
Yeah, Mickey's favorite
And we're going to
monster.
talk about Silence of the Lambs. It's the silence of Mickey.
Perfect. Oh, well, this week is an awesome week because I'm really, well, like we always are, but I'm really excited about this for several reasons. We're going to start an episode per episode of a limited series, which is cool.
Yeah.
And try to take it one episode at a time. And it's a great because prefaced, I guess, to say that we have both seen the entire series, so we're not watching this once, for the first time. So we've seen the entire.
Yeah, we're second time around.
Right, and it's second time around, but we're going to try to keep our comments to as much as we can to episode by episode. And it's a great series. It was based on a great book. It's been turned into 2 movies prior. And so tell us a little bit about the backstory of this particular wonderful piece, Tim.
Yeah, I think just to start, I think it's a very appropriate subject for us to cover because it is based on a classic book. And there have been a couple of adaptations, one of which was a classic film that we could have done a podcast on all along.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, we get this series, The Haunting of Hill House, that hit Netflix in October. And I have to be honest. I mean, first of all, I love the book, and I love the original Robert Wise film from 1963.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But when I heard about this thing coming to Netflix, this series, even though it was, is his name, I think Mike Flanagan, I like some of his work, but when I heard he was doing a series on this, I just was appalled. I thought that was a terrible idea.
Mm-hmm.
That the last time they tried to adapt it, it just was that Liam Neeson mess of a film.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, why would you take, a perfect short novel and try to adapt it into a series? But I was pleasantly surprised because he basically did not do the book. He used aspects from the book in the movie, and he turned it into his own little thing. I started to say little monster. I can't express how happy I was to see what the result was because I had no hopes for it whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was similar. You're more literary than I, of course, and I have not read the book since probably high school because I think I read it the same within a couple of months period that I read Turn of the Screw. But so I went into it with trepidation too, and then but I got to tell you, within like probably. I want to say after that opening narration, but within like 15 or 20 minutes, I was totally hooked. I was going, okay, this is really cool. I love the gothic elements. I love the storytelling, the pacing, the just the way he did everything. I was going, okay. But then I was nervous all the way through watching it, going, he's going to screw it up. He's going to screw it up. He's going to screw it up. And
yeah. What's going to happen with the end?
Yeah. I was going to do the ending. So.
Yeah, I have to say, it's quite apparent if you know this book like I do, and if you know the movies and the story, Flanagan clearly loves the source material,
mm-hmm.
and he pays homage to it every chance he can get. And we'll bring up some of this stuff.
Well, yeah, I hope so, because I mean that's kind of with Johnny Has the Keys, and doing our keys the way they are. I think you letting me know, because I know are more familiar with the book probably than I, but those homages and those things. I mean, that these are the inspirations that came from the original novel, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's talk about, before we get into it, like scene by scene or shot by shot or whatever. Flanagan, Flanagan came from, I mean, I think I heard of him from Gerald's Game, which again, really good adaptation, and I really liked it. But you kind of suggested that to me. You said, hey, watch it, because I was like, another Stephen King, and it's going to be on Netflix, so it's going to suck, and I'm not going to like it. But I really liked it. It was really good. But I don't think I've seen anything else by him. He's done horror before, right? Or other horror.
Yeah, he has. And I have not seen everything. He did a movie called Oculus that was about a horror, like a haunted mirror kind of story. I have not seen that.
Mm-hmm.
And then he did. The first movie I recall seeing of his was a movie I just happened to check out on Netflix called Hush. And it starred his wife, and she is also the woman that plays Theodora in Haunting.
Oh, really?
And it's a great, great little movie about a woman being stalked. She's a writer, and she has a cabin out in the woods, and she's being terrorized. It's kind of a home invasion thing with one guy. And that was great. And then I referred a movie to you that you may not have seen yet called Before I Wake.
Yeah.
And he did that too.
Okay.
And I really liked it. And then I found out he was doing Gerald's Game, and I was like, oh, okay. And now he's doing, the sequel to The Shining, Dr. Sleep. I don't know if you knew that.
Yes. Yeah, I did read that in doing research.
Yeah, with Ewan McGregor.
So so he's got some pedigree coming into this, and I think it obviously shows. He has a great grasp. Again, not seeing anything else other than Gerald's Game to compare it to, but Gerald's Game had such a unique style of telling the King story in a very novella King way. It was well cast. It was well shot. It's kind of interesting to say, hey, we're going to spend, 2/3 of the movie in one room with this woman. But the way he did it with the flashback stories and then kind of expanding her character a little bit was really good. And then the aesthetic that he takes with Hill House is so gothic and so, to me, Shirley Jackson. I mean, it just feels oppressive from the very beginning, but he ties everything so it's just I was very impressed, really impressed with his work, and we have to say it's him. He's the one that wrote it, directed it. It's his baby. So
yeah, and I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, audience land out there, but I think he writes most of his stuff. I think he may have written the adaptation to Gerald's Game. I know he wrote most of The Haunting, which is admirable.
Yes.
That he's actually writing and directing.
Yeah.
I'm sure he may have had some help.
Well, so he's definitely one to keep an eye on in the future too, like you said, with Dr. Sleep and whatever other projects he's doing.
That's one of the things I wanted to mention is that, I mean, unless I'm just out of touch, it seems like when we grew up and we're watching movies in like the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, there was, this like clan of horror movie directors, like John Carpenter, George Romero, Tobe Hooper. And it seems to me like that's kind of gone away and we haven't seen that for a while. With the exception of maybe Del Toro. I mean, I would definitely classify Del Toro as a horror director.
Oh, yeah.
And now I'm seeing this Flanagan guy as like a legitimate horror movie director. And I'm hoping it's the beginning of a new generation of great horror movie directors.
Yeah, it could be.
Sense?
Yeah, like him, like the guy, cannot remember the name right now, but the guy that did It. I mean, it seems like
Muschietti or something. Yeah, I know Andrew Muschietti. I think it's his name.
So there's a rise, I think, in these auteur horror guys coming. So that's good.
Yeah. Well, and there's a rise in horror in general. I mean, there's a streaming channel now.
Well,
there is. we have a cold front to the left and a rise in horror on the right.
Yeah. It needs to be a title of something. Well, and with our current, situation in the United States, I can see why people are favoring horror. So that makes sense.
It's escapism.
It's escapism. It's got to be worse than this, please. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so let's dive in. It's a Netflix series. It's 10 parts. We're going to try to cover an episode a week kind of thing. The first episode is Steven sees. Well, wait, before we jump in, hey, let me backtrack. What was
Okay.
when did you first read the novel? Because I read it, like I said, in high school. When did you first read the novel?
I think I read it too in high school,
Mm-hmm.
or probably shortly after That's Macabre, because I was pretty much latching on to anything King referenced in that book.
Mm-hmm.
So that may have been where I thought, or where I first discovered it. I have since read it probably, I've probably read it more than any other book, with the exception to I Am Legend. That's probably my most number one read book.
Okay.
That's like my easy chair I go back to every Christmas. I can just slip into that effortlessly.
Richard Matheson. Good choice.
Yeah. And Stephen King. There's several Stephen Kings I've read multiple times, but I would say Haunting is right up there in my top five most read books. I can't tell you how many times I've read it since. I had a job a few years back where I was in a vehicle a lot of the time, and I listened to it a couple of times on audio as well.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. So
Well, and I remember, like I said,
I'm
reading
pretty
it
familiar
then,
with it.
and then the movie, the Robert Weiss movie. I think I remember probably watching it on a shock theater one Saturday, or something, and really loving it, loving the black and white, liking that
Uh-huh.
whole. It was almost like an Americanized Hammer movie to me. That's what it felt
Hmm.
like. But really liked it.
It was
Yeah,
less in your face,
yeah, but
but
he still
yeah.
had, unfortunately, he still did a lot of that early 60s tropes, of the rack focus zoom ins and some of the weird angles just to give it, the Scotch angles just to give it a weird vibe that also pulls you out of
Yeah.
the whole experience, you know.
Uh, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love those weird '60s angles where the camera spins and twists up into a corner, or you get the Batman angle.
Yeah, yeah, Scotch angles. Yeah, which obviously inspired Sam Raimi, because he did a lot of that with Evil Dead. But see, I'm the opposite because one of the things I liked about Flanagan's version is this lockdown camera kind of approach where the scary stuff is behind you or behind them and slowly approaches as opposed to these weird, bizarre angles. Everything is very leveled in the way he shoots it. But even when he's moving the camera, or even when the jump scares come, you don't expect them. It's not like broadcasting that, oh, this is a weird scene and now it's going to be creepy and we're going to hear banging. It's suddenly like it suddenly happens. And that to me is scarier, I think. But okay, so diving into it. So we both were influenced by the book. We both liked the movie. And now we get this Netflix series. And the first episode is called Steven Sees a Ghost, which I thought was a cool title to start it. Uh, what did you think of that opening? It opens with just the VO, the voice and it is Steven. It's the actor who plays Steven.
Well, it's the voiceover of the novel,
Yeah,
right?
it's the entire first paragraph, I think, of the novel, not having read it. But
Yeah.
that whole thing about a creature can't live alone, blah blah blah, and it's just very oppressive. And it ends with that great line of Hill House had stood for 100 years and would stand for 100 more, and whatever walked there walked alone. It
Yeah.
had that really, and the whole time it's just those slow montage shots of the house because he
Yeah.
does, she makes it in the book, but he definitely in this series, the house is almost a character itself. Well, and we hope, we find out, spoiler alert, we find out it's actually a lot of characters, but it's just a really ominous, slow opening that I was thinking, okay, that works. That's really cool. That sets it up.
I don't mean to dwell on the literary aspects, but
No,
I've
please.
often said that is, I think that's one of the best paragraphs written ever. It's
Yes,
certainly one of the best opening paragraphs to any book I've ever read. And I think Stephen King said something similar in Dance Macabre. I don't know if he's come across anything better since,
I agree.
but yeah, it's a phenomenal. It's also, if I may dwell just a little bit, it's sort of every bit as responsible as Richard Matheson was as to bringing horror into the modern century, to modernize what used to be very gothic. And like you were saying, the old, you had mentioned Hammer films or the Universal films.
Hmm.
Stephen King has been known as being the leader in modern horror writing, but he always attributed it to Richard Masson. Well, I say that this Shirley Jackson novel is another paradigm to that,
Hmm.
to testify to that.
I would agree with that.
She does not talk flowery. It is not very literary. It is very concise. She uses the precise wording that she wants. It's not a what's the word of it? It's not a gaudy book. It's not, it's just to the point. This is what's going on, and hang on for the
Right.
ride.
Yeah, I agree
Yeah.
with that. I think from the literary standpoint, Dracula and the way Bram Stoker wrote it, had with the letters and all of that was a unique style. It kind of set a precedent kind of thing. And then when Shelley came out with Frankenstein, and so much of it was this cerebral verbiage, I guess was the best way to say it, of the way she wrote it. And then I think you're right that Shirley Jackson would be next with the way she told this story.
Yeah, right up there with those Twilight Zone writers like Matheson and Serling and Beaumont. Um, and it's not Elizabethan, but it's kind of like the Shakespearean thing where it's like, oh yeah, he's saying it really pretty, but you could say it in a lot less words. And I mean, that's why she uses words like the doors were sensibly shut. You didn't hear the word sensibly,
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
something like that. It's very streamlined.
Yeah, she was like contemporizing the storytelling, which is
Exactly.
which I think Flanagan does too very well. I think he
Yeah.
updates it in a way that seems very normal for us. It seems very easy for us to latch on to. These characters are really easy to get a handle on really quickly, which
Hmm.
is interesting because the first one we see is Stephen. Stephen's the oldest of the clan. He is the writer who's I guess in a way he would be called the if this was a Stephen King story, he would be the Stephen King surrogate. Who's a writer who writes about horror, who's the lead character in a horror story, sort of thing.
Right.
But unlike like the character in King's character in The Shining, I'm sorry, in Salem's Lot, Stephen doesn't believe in any of the ghost crap. He doesn't, he's writing these books, but doesn't believe in it, and that's kind of established in that that first scene with him and the woman who he's got as a new client. I guess he's wanting to hear her story. I liked her, by the way. I thought that was really good storytelling too. The African American woman who's just lost her, Irene, I think, and she's just lost her husband, and so she's
That's
telling.
one of my favorite scenes in that
Oh,
whole episode.
and the
Yeah.
way she changes moods and everything, very well acted. I thought from the very first time I saw it, I thought, okay, for a one shot kind of one scene character actress, this is a gravy part. This is awesome
Hmm.
to have those words to be able to say, um, but really cool.
And I didn't do it, but I was tempted to time her soliloquy because he timed it. You could see it on his recorder. I think it said 3 minutes or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, man, that was some deep, scary stuff that she was talking about,
Oh
in that
yeah.
3 minutes.
And she
Yeah.
really takes you there and ends it with that I haven't slept in that room since, kind of thing.
Hmm. One sentence, very concise.
Yeah, and it's so set up of we're telling ghost stories. That's what we're going to be doing for the
Right.
next 10 hours. We're going to tell ghost stories. I liked the
Mhm.
casting in general. Well, I think we can just start with that.
It's next on my list.
All the way
Yeah.
to this series, the casting, not the kids, the adults, the side characters, all of it, very well done. I don't think there's a clunker in the entire thing.
Mm-mm. The cast is wonderful. I would also say something that you know I love already because you've read my um, novel, the nonlinear narrative. I
Yes.
am a huge fan of that.
Yep.
I love that they bounce around, and that's what, that even if there isn't, I mean, even there's always going to be a mystery, but there's even more mystery when you see something, but you don't know why it happened until it comes up later on in the story.
Mm-hmm.
So you're creating mystery upon mystery.
Loved it, and I think
I
he
love
did
that.
that. I think he did that very well. I mean, we are well. We'll get to it. I don't want to give it away right now, but
Hmm.
yeah, I think, and I think I've said it to you before. One of the things I missed from this everybody loves it new movie version of it was the fact that he didn't do that. I really missed that time shift because I think that was what was so great about the book. And I know he's
Hmm.
turning it into two parts, but I missed it. And I think it's well done here. And he could learn from Flanagan how to do it better because that's the next scene we see. We see her story, and he basically tells her, ghosts are what we think they are, or we see what we want to see, kind of thing. But
Hmm.
before that, even we suddenly go back and we get Nell crying, and we don't know where we are at first, but then we realize, oh, we're in Hill House. And I've gotten the notes here. Oh, look, Elliot growed up. So,
Hmm.
but I have to admit, as much as a Spielberg junkie as I am, it took me a few seconds to realize, oh my God, that's Elliot from E.T.
Right.
So, but
And and there's an ET lunchbox in there somewhere
yep,
as an homage.
there you go.
Yeah.
That's a key. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
in the treehouse scene between the brothers.
Uh-huh.
Luke he keeps his crayons in an ET lunchbox, which is haha. There's an
Right.
Easter egg for you. Um,
Hmm.
but I love that whole first scene back in time with the kids. So it's a nightmare. It starts with the dad going. It starts with the Stephen, the brother, actually going into Nell's room saying, "Are you okay?" And then Dad appears, kind of thing. So Luke is in there again. Brilliant casting. I loved Luke, the little Luke, or young Luke, and young Nell. Both of
Uh-huh.
them were awesome. And
Uh-huh.
that whole story that the dad uses to justify that Hugh uses to justify this. Everybody has dreams, and sometimes dreams spill out. I thought that was a really cool way of telling it. I did have a comment here of the audio recording of the doors is so terrifying. Because it's not just an open door like a click open it. It's like a clunk and then I mean these doors are huge and massive and loud, and later on that becomes so important of, oh, be quiet, don't turn the door, oh, she'll hear you. But
Uh-huh.
they're massive and huge and wooden and everything else.
With lion's head doorknobs or
Yes.
like very intricate looking doorknobs.
Now, was that in the book? I seem to remember in the book, what weren't the doorknobs ornate as well? They
Um,
were like,
I wouldn't say they were. I can't quite remember, but they're definitely that way in the Wise movie. So
yes,
they're,
yeah.
and he was adapting it, closer to the publication. It was written in '59. He did it in '63, so he did it 4 years after the book was published. So,
And going back to my aesthetic, the way I always look at everything from a cinema standpoint, I love the fact that even in those opening shots, he establishes Hill House as huge.
hmm.
The bedroom is huge with the two kids. The hallway is big. The doors are like 10, 11-foot doors. I mean, they're huge. Um, and the way he does that whole pacing thing of the scares are there already. It's not just this kind of ominous, oh, I had a dream about the Bentnick lady. There's this ominous presence kind of thing, and his subtlety starts. Like the dad, who is Hugh Crane. It's the Crane family, let's say that. And Hugh is the dad, and he goes and comforts Nell and Luke, and then he goes, Stephen, go back to bed. Steve goes back to bed. He closes the door. He goes in and looks on his other daughter, Cheryl, and she's doing typical girl dreaming.
Something
she's like
about
voice mumbling.
Pandas and macaroni or something.
Yeah,
it's hilarious.
Pandas and, and kind of a little joke, and you kind of laugh, and the dad kind of just smiles at her, closes the door. When he closes the door, the kid's bedroom door is open again.
Yeah.
And you just saw him close it. And instead of making a big deal about it, he just walks over, he closes it, and then he taps on it a little bit to make sure that it latches. And you kind of get this impression that he noticed it, we noticed it, but it's not. So we're getting the scare already.
Or he's used to it.
Yeah, or is he, yes, is this something that is used to happening all the time? And then we go to my first favorite shot, which he does a lot in this, which is these establishing shots of people sleeping or people standing in the foreground, almost like my favorite Carpenter shot of you kids go next door, blah, 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 and she's in the foreground and the shape sits up in the back.
Yeah.
So we get this Nellie asleep on her side. Oh, she looks so cute. Something's going to happen, because he's just slowly pushing the camera in towards her. And we don't know what's going to happen, but we know something's going to happen. We're scared and we get nervous. And then suddenly you see that the Bentnick lady has been there the entire time behind her. The ghost has been there and is just slowly moving towards her. And then we cut to the credits. So we've had this whole opening sequence of like 5-8 minutes. And then we finally get the credit sequence. God, that was creepy to me. I was, oh, she's right there. Oh, she's right there.
I see the Bentnick lady every day when I walk across my house in the mornings, and it's still dark out, and I'm coming over here to my office, and I look down this long hallway to this dark, open guest bedroom. She's standing right there. I have been seeing her ever since I saw this show over a month ago.
Well, yes, she definitely has a presence, I think, throughout the entire series, which we'll explore as we go through it. But that was creepy. I do have to say, and I wrote it down here, it's a key, but it also is a disappointing one for me. I really do not like the credit sequence of this show. It reminds me of Westworld. It reminds me of Daredevil. It reminds me of all these new series that have come out in the past 2 or 3 years, which use all these sculptures and these images
that are plainly graphics.
Yes.
Yeah, they're like computerized graphics.
Yeah, and I really did not like that, but it seemed to be influenced by Westworld and Daredevil and all these. But I did love the last shot. The last shot to me looks like the cover of a novel, of just the red room with the light coming underneath the door and the light from the keyhole. And then you suddenly see the title, Haunting of Hill House. Mostly because I think that's another thread for us. Like you said, he hints at stuff that we don't find out till later. The red room is a huge thread throughout this. I mean, I think we don't find out until the very last episode what the red room really is. And I don't think we go in there till the last episode. Right? Maybe? I think.
If not, it's very near the end. I can't remember if it's the last or the next to last, but yeah. Yeah. And again, my aesthetic, the red room, the door is so red. It almost hit me like for me, it was a trigger key. It was like a Sixth Sense kind of thing. It was like, because Shyamalan uses the red
all the way through Sixth Sense to say that's where a ghost is. So I thought that was really kind of a key for me. And it's so bright because everything else we've seen up until then, even the scenes modern day, are done in this really blue and green kind of, not filter. It's not that he's filtered it or anything, but it's the lighting, the coloring, everything is very green and blue. So it's got a creepy, cold kind of feel to the entire episode. So anything that's red or gold just kind of jumps out.
As far as the cinematography, I think it's very dark. I think we had this conversation yesterday. A lot of it is really dark to me. And that's how the ghosts always kind of shock me, because they're hard to see at first.
Well, and while we're there, yeah, let's talk about that because, since it's been released in October, lots of people have talked about there are ghosts throughout the entire series. All 10 episodes, you see ghosts in the background that you may not see. You have to kind of go back and look at them. And I think there's even like YouTube channels or short videos or whatever that now like list them all. Go, scene by scene or episode by episode and say, did you see this in the background kind of thing? And they're there. They really are. I for some reason, I did not feel the way you did that it was too dark in places. Because but I have read that online, that people say this series is way too dark. Not dark, creepy, dark in I can't see stuff.
Yeah, not dark in subject matter, but dark in visual. Yeah.
Right, and I didn't think that. I actually liked I thought the dark was just dark enough. But it may be in what we're seeing it on, the type of clarity we're seeing it or whatever. Or maybe he wanted it that way. He wanted scenes to be so dark that, like you said, the ghosts kind of pop, or we get into that we're seeing more than is really there kind of thing. Because I do think he plays on that a lot, the imagination of, we end up, I swear, by even the end of this first episode, every time I'm in a scene, I'm looking around the corners. I'm looking around the edges of the frame, the edges of the room, going, is there something over there? Is there something over there? Is something going to jump out? Because, and it's very rare. I mean, it does have jump scares. This is not a series without jump scares. As a matter of fact, two of the jump scares I think are some of the scariest I've ever seen. It's mostly this ominous feeling that something's going to happen that they don't see that you see. I think the next one that I remember is, a nice little scene. And again, the colors show because it's shot in such green and red, but like the mom's robe is red and she's sitting with Nellie and she's going, get her blanket. I'm going to sleep with her for a while. And it's such a nice little parental thing. Nellie doesn't want to sleep in her room because of Bit Neck Lady. So she's going to sleep on the couch and mom's going to sleep with her on the floor, which was a great parenting mom thing, I thought. But then mom gets up, checks on her, leaves the room. We even see in the corner, we see her shadow walk away, which I thought was a ghost, but it's not. It was her shadow walking away. And then Nellie has her first paralysis, I guess, sleep paralysis, whatever it is.
Cool camera work.
This young actress that is so cool, and we just a close up of her face, but we know she is seeing something terrifying. We don't see it yet, but then we pull back, and then the camera does your weird angle thing. Yeah. Of flipping sideways, like 90 degrees.
And where she's almost vertical. Yeah, she is vertical, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And suddenly you realize that the ghost, or Bent Neck Lady, is pulling this, Japanese horror thing on her, where she's hanging right above her with her hair hanging down and everything. Again, very creepy, very scary. A key for me was definitely that reminded me of The Ring, because it was this Japanese, you didn't see her face. Yeah. She had all the black hair tendrils hanging down,
Well, there you go, stealing my keys. But
no, go ahead.
No, that's okay. That was it. That was it. I was like, that was so Japanese horror with the hair hanging down. And I mean, she reminded me of the chick crawling out of the TV in The Ring, big time.
But but he did it in a different way. You know, he didn't do it. He did it with this side angle.
Yeah.
So suddenly, even though we know she's hovering, she's actually, it looks like two people standing up.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
That was cool.
Which I thought was really cool.
Mhm.
So we come from this scare back to modern day, and you know, and Stephen is doing his, I'm going to debunk your theory, your story, but we find a lot of backstory about him, and we've essentially got, and this came up, so I want to examine it as we go through this second viewing of it, because I did not catch the whole grief thing, stages of grief thing when I first watched the series, but that's what I've read since, that the kids all represent the stages of grief, and I never knew that when I watched it the first time, but watching it again, this first episode, I definitely say, oh, okay, now I can see it.
I mean,
You know that.
I heard it from you, and I've done a little research, and I think I found maybe the article you saw. But has Flanagan said that?
Yes.
Oh, he has?
He's actually said, I researched that and found out not only has he said, yes, that was intentional, that each of the 5 children represent the stages of grief, but it's also in order from oldest to youngest.
Yeah. Of course, if someone said that to me, I would have said it was intentional too, whether it was or not.
But when you think about it, the stages of grief, you know, work because Stephen is the oldest and he's denial, and his whole character is about denial. Not only is he denying everything he has written, all these ghost stories, but he's also denying anything he saw that night or what happened. You know, he's in his own denial kind of thing. And then Shirley is next, and she's actually the next character, the next sibling we meet other than Nell. And she's anger, which is the next stage. And the next stage of grief is bargaining, which is Theodora. And then depression, which is Luke. And then the youngest, who is Nellie, is acceptance.
Yeah.
Which works. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's brilliant to add that kind of, to me, literary trapping on top of this ghost story.
Yeah.
That was just really cool.
Yeah, he's got some structure there where he's seeing the big picture and then breaking it down into 10 episodes. I love, I've already said I love the nonlinear aspect of the storytelling, but I also love the linear. Well, it's not linear, but the segmenting of, you know, the first 5 episodes being about each of the 5 kids, you know. And this one, it's called Stephen Sees a Ghost, but it's kind of about Nell.
Well, I think because she's the catalyst.
Yeah.
But it's really, I think, about Stephen has to realize that something's happening, kind of thing. Because it is, I mean, Nell is the catalyst. She's the water droplet. And the rest of the season, we're watching how she affects everybody else, what she does and everything. And
it starts with the woman telling the story, and he doesn't believe her because he says he's never seen a ghost, and then then he does.
Yep.
So.
And then he does. Yeah, he sees his own sister's ghost.
Yeah.
You know, but and you're talking about linear and nonlinear. I like the fact that he essentially introduces each of these modern day grown up kids almost in order too. You know, we do get Nellie first, so let's just jump and say we get Nellie first because she's the catalyst. But we see Stephen, then we meet Shirley because Nell tries to call Stephen. He doesn't answer. She tries to call Shirley. Shirley doesn't answer. Then we meet Theodora. And the only time we really see Luke is in a real quick jump shot first of when, you know, when Nellie's death occurs, but then the last scene, essentially the next to last scene with him and Stephen. So he kind of introduces the kids one at a time too, in modern day. I think in the past we see them kind of all mixed up. You know, we meet Stephen first, then Nellie, then Luke, then Dad, then Mom. You know, that sort of thing. Now, the novel doesn't have kids, right? The novel is older people
Yeah.
investigating paranoia.
The novel's completely different, other than some of the names. The house is built by someone named Hugh Crane, whose
Mm,
wife dies before she even gets there. And they
okay.
have a daughter named Abigail, which plays into the series a little bit later. The heir to the house is named Luke Sanderson.
Okay.
So that's where Luke's name basically comes from. There is Eleanor, who is Nell, essentially, and
Okay.
there is a Theodora, and there is a Luke. And then there is a guy, oh my God, I can't remember his name. It's something Montague, is the main psychic investigator that pulls this group of people together to investigate the house.
Okay. Okay. And then
Um,
so maybe Shirley was his homage to Shirley Jackson, maybe.
he was. I'm certain of it. Yeah.
So and then so Stephen would be the only new name or new character because the Dudleys are in it too, right? The Dudleys are the
The
caretakers.
Dudleys are in it. They're the caretakers. And from what I understand, Steven was an homage to Steven Spielberg because
Mm.
this was done by Amblin Entertainment, I think.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. And that's Steven Spielberg, the little logo of E.T. flying or whatever,
Yep. Yep.
and he cast Henry Thomas, which is just it's almost incestuous how much of the shit's going on in this with the novel, the original film, and with the series and everyone involved.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
that's great, and all the Easter eggs, all the ghosts, all the little
hmm
stuff that he does, the references. I mean, this is key city for us as far as
Yeah.
references and inspirations from something else.
That's why I think it's kind of fun to do a few keys per episode because I mean, obviously, you mentioned the Japanese horror key with Nell and the floating ghost or whatever, the floating midnight lady. Um, you don't get that in every episode. So there are going to be unique keys to each episode. And
Hmm.
I've got another one that I don't think you'll notice, and I'll bring it up when we get to it later. But
Okay.
but yeah, and there's lots of ties, as I said, to the cast as far as character naming, and I won't get into it immediately, but as they come up and I think of them, I'll point it out.
Well, I've got yeah, because I'm kind of going by it scene by scene since we're doing just one episode kind of thing, and
And
um,
we should,
I
yeah.
remember I liked. Well, like we said, we've got that incredible, great ghost story at the beginning with Irene and her husband who died in the car wreck and everything, and then he's haunting her house. And then with Shirley, we get another ghost story because, but it's very subtle. It's she's a funeral director and or works in a funeral home. It's her funeral home, which again, odd profession for somebody who is haunted by ghosts, but we'll get to that in later episodes. Um,
Yeah.
but she's trying to convince a little boy to go to his grandma's funeral. And just that whole scene I love too because sits down with him. He's coloring and just kind of very matter of fact. And she's saying, it's a way for us to say goodbye. And he goes, I don't want to say goodbye because he says something like, I know she's okay because she sits on my bed every night and she doesn't blink. And you just go, what? It was just
Yeah.
creepy, but so well done and so cool. So we've got these cool ghost stories being told all around us. Um, then we're suddenly thrust back into the modern world because we get Theodora's entrance, and she's like, basically, hey, I'm a lesbian who picks up people at a bar, but I wear gloves.
Well, I love the bluntness of that is actually quite refreshing because it's alluded to or hinted at in the novel that she's a lesbian,
Oh, really?
and yeah, she is a psychic lesbian. She's a paranormal lesbian, I guess you would say. And in the Wise movie, he actually shot a scene of her I don't know if it's available on a DVD. The one I had was recorded off TCM, but he recorded a scene with her introduction. She's like yelling at somebody out of a New York apartment building window.
Uh-huh.
It's like a fight, like a breakup fight, and she crosses over to a mirror, and in lipstick it's written "Good Riddance." And I guess MGM or whoever did the film said, "No, that's a little too lesbian for us. You can't have that in your movie." So, I mean, even Wise was going to put more of the lesbian aspect into it than Shirley put into the novel. And now at least it's just accepted. So
Right.
that's kind of, to me, a little refreshing.
Well, and such a great character scene. I mean, she's the one aggressing. She's the one that picks up the girl in the bar. She's the one that takes her
Yeah.
home. When the girl wants to get all personal with her, she basically puts all the walls up and says, "Hey, get out. We came here. What we have to do. I got to go to work in the morning." That sort
Yeah.
of thing. And
Yeah,
then
see
she
ya.
sits. Yeah. And then she comes out. She's obviously staying with her sister Shirley at the funeral home, just in a side house kind of thing.
Hmm. Like a guest
But
house.
she goes over and they have beers, and she keeps talking about boundaries. Such a great scene of her saying, and you can tell she's kind of saying it about herself. That's what's led her to her gloves are boundaries. We don't know why
Uh-huh.
yet, but her gloves are boundaries. And she sets boundaries in her world with people, with not getting close to people, with everything else. And she I remember when I saw that scene, and then it cuts back to Theodora, even though it doesn't cut back, I remembered her in the first scene with Steve, and Steve basically says, "Go back to bed." But she's played with that whole emo bangs in the eye kind of, "I'm a grumpy girl, don't talk to me, I'm going back to bed" kind of thing. And I thought, okay, so she's always been that way. She's always
Yeah.
been this, "I'm a loner, I don't like to hug, don't touch me," kind of thing.
I think I can't remember her name. She is Flanagan's wife in real life,
See, I did not
and
know that. That is cool.
yeah, and
Because she's
I think
gorgeous,
she is
too.
she's an exceptional actress. She's got like an Angelina Jolie quality,
Mm-hmm.
and she I
There's a
forgot what I
key
was going to
for
say.
you.
Oh, you need to see Hush because she is in Hush. She is the woman that's being terrorized in the cabin, and it's a completely different character. And there's a
Okay.
twist that I'm not going to tell you because I don't want to spoil it. I want you to see it. But there's a great twist to her character as well. So
Okay.
anyway, um,
Well, and then you get, another thing I liked was it would be easy, I think, if you're a writer like Flanagan, you're writing this adaptation, you're doing your own characters and your own deal, and you've got that sort of character. It would be easy then to make her the addict or the artist or the loner or whatever. But instead, we find out she's very educated. She's got her career, her profession, everything. She's actually a very, a very career-oriented person. Just her personal life is this walled, closed box kind of thing, which is cool. A
mhm.
nice, I think, layer or texture to it. Oh, one of my favorite scenes. We cut to a character we've not seen. We don't know who he is, but he's in bed. And again, it's that shot that he uses so much, I think, during this series of it's a side, we're level with the bed looking at somebody sleeping on their side facing us. And then
Hmm.
suddenly over his back comes this arm. And we think, oh my gosh, he's got a woman in bed with him. But wait, is it a real woman? Because the arm kind of looks kind of bluish or gray, and we don't know. And then we suddenly think, oh, it's a ghost because it touches his face. But when he turns around and we cut to him rolling over and looking at her, he's not scared. He kind of smiles. But then we suddenly see her, she screams, and he jumps up because his
Yeah,
phone's ringing. So again, it's
right.
that jump scare works really good for me, but we didn't get to see her face. We just saw her mouth. And again, it's that kind of the Ring Japanese dark screamy girl thing,
Hmm.
which I really liked. And then when he looks at his phone, it says Nellie. He picks it up. We suddenly realize, oh, this is Dad. This is Henry Thomas grown up. And it's oh shoot, I should have written his name down. It's what's his name? Plays
It's
the
Timothy
grown-up dad.
Hutton.
Yeah, Timothy Hutton.
Timothy Hutton. Yeah.
And again, I think that's great casting between the two of them. Their mannerisms are very similar. I don't know if one studied the other or how that was done, but their line interps, the way they say things, the way they talk to, especially the kids, is so well acted between the two of them. So again, another ghost. So there's obviously a ghost haunting dad as well. But now we suddenly find out why, and we suddenly get the full flashback for the first time. So we're back with the whole Stevie, we're going to run away, we're going to get out kind of thing, but we don't know why. So it's, again, to your point, it's that all these puzzles or all these questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, why is he behaving that way? What happened?
Right. And we're seeing that last night, essentially, but we don't know why. We don't know. We're left with so many questions after it because so many things I caught this time that I didn't catch the first time, like him. He actually says, "Don't open your eyes," like 4 times, and yet what does Stephen do? He keeps his eyes open the whole time, and we see that glimpse of we don't know what
Somebody following them.
Yeah,
Somebody with long dark hair and a white gown.
right. And we don't know who or what, but that's obviously who they're running from. Maybe we don't know. We're left with that question. When he gets outside, we hear Luke say, "I saw Abigail in the window." We don't know who Abigail is or what's happening.
Well,
or what that
wait.
means.
Before he gets outside, what about the staircase? As they're coming down the staircase, you see people standing on either side in the shadows. Two to the right, one to the left. Who are these people?
Okay, and we learn later on, they're ghosts,
Yeah.
but we didn't know that.
And they don't move; they're just standing there. It's creepy as fuck.
Yeah, you get this whole panic, fear thing of them running to the car and don't open your eyes. I saw Abigail in the window. Where's Mom? Nellie's just crying. Luke is looking out the back window. Steve is looking out the back window, and they drive off. And you're going, oh my gosh, what happened? And so now we're set for the whole rest of the series because we want to know what happened. And then progression-wise, so right from that kind of panic thing, we suddenly go to Nell in the modern day in a house that's obviously falling apart and overgrown and everything else. So Hill House has changed drastically in the years since they've left that night.
And wait, what about the phone call? Did we talk about that already? The call that woke the dad up before the jump scare is from Nell.
Yes.
And he's the only one that answers because she also calls Shirley and Stephen, right?
Yep.
And I know Shirley doesn't answer, but Stephen doesn't either, does he?
Stephen doesn't answer. He tries to call her back later in the day, but he gets her voicemail. So he leaves a voicemail, and she comes back into a hotel room. She's obviously in a hotel room, and she just gets there right as he hangs up.
Yeah.
And we find out later she's had a scare is why, but we don't know why. She obviously enters the hotel room and she's panting and she's scared, but we don't know why. But she lies to her dad on the phone.
Yeah, she's sitting in a car and tells him that she is in bed or something.
Well,
or
she
at
says,
home.
and that's it. Is she really lying? Because she says, "I'm home."
Yeah, and she's lying. It's clear.
But when it cuts after that, and he says, "Go to Stevens. I'll fly in
from Jacksonville. He's in Jacksonville.
So he's in Florida and they're in San Francisco or L.A.
I don't really know. I can't remember.
But then she's not either place. She is actually in Boston or wherever the house is, which we need to look up. I need to figure that out. But she's actually at Hill House, and it's lit up.
Yeah, I know. Like it's like people live there.
Yeah. And I was going, oh, that's creepy. Oh, it's creepy. Oh, it's creepy. Then we cut. So yeah, so you're right. In progression wise, then we suddenly cut to the panic of that night, and then we cut back, and Nell is in the house, obviously in modern day. She's in a gown and she's dancing by herself or with something that we don't see. So we can easily say, all of us, sort of in the know, can say, oh, she's dancing with a ghost kind of thing. But we don't know. She's just dancing around. And then we get one of my favorite moments in the first scene, the first episode. I think it's Theodora, but the clock, again, in bed, this kind of, laying on my side in bed thing, and it pans over to the clock, and the clock says 3:03. And then we cut to every one of the kids waking up holding their throat.
Gasping.
From a nightmare.
Yeah.
Gasping. So obviously from a nightmare. And the only one that says anything is Shirley, and she says, Nellie's in the red room.
Nellie's in the red room.
Oh my God! I freaked out. I was like going, ooh, what does that mean? What does that mean? So, and again, his juxtaposition, the way he puts these scenes together, where that's almost a jump scare. Mm-hmm. It's the first time we really see grown-up Luke, and we just see him on a bunk bed sitting up. We don't know what. And we don't even know really that that's Luke yet. We just know, we assume it because it's all the kids. But then we cut from that to the introduction of the Dudleys. So we get Dad and Mr. Dudley
I
and
forgot
the
about
key, and they go up to unlock the key, unlock the red room. It doesn't work. I love the fact that little Nellie says, what could frickin' be in there or whatever? And she goes, don't say that. She goes, you do. I mean, it's such cool little kid dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
But another one of his great moments of they walk away to go get another key, and we hold on that shot of the door, and suddenly we see the shadow move underneath the door. So we know something or someone's in there kind of thing. And then we meet, then we meet Mrs. Dudley and
Annabeth Gish, and she is marvelous.
She is.
She is awesome.
She is just awesome in this, and she, to me, reminded me the most of the book. I suddenly thought, this is almost the exact character of the book.
Well, some of her lines are snatched right from the book.
Yeah?
Yeah, that whole, we won't be here for you when you're alone in the dark. I mean, that's right out of the book.
Yeah. In the night, in the dark.
Too.
Yeah. And she plays it so well, and she's got this ominous kind of Puritanian. I mean, I could see her being in, American Horror Story, just because she's got this kind of gothic, primitive, puritanical, you need Jesus kind of thing.
Well, and she's got key clout with me because she was on the X-Files too. I mean, she kind of took Scully's place there for a while. But I just love it.
And I like, that is a great key. I had forgotten that. And because she was with the Terminator 2 guy. That I really didn't like him.
What's his face?
I didn't really like him replacing Mulder, but I did like
Gish. Yeah, I can't remember her name, but they brought her back for the recent series as well. Yeah, I think they killed her. Yeah. I think they may have killed her, but yeah, they brought her back.
But she also says, she's talking about you need Jesus kind of thing, and we get this great, probably the longest scene in the pilot with the mom, who's coming in and defends Stephen because
I love how she handles that.
Of how literate he is. Yes, he knows the Bible, but he also knows the Talmud, and he knows the Quran, and he knows. And she kind of chastises her with Shakespeare,
That
you
line
know.
about Horatio, yes, yes. I can't. I
Hmm.
wish I'd wrote it down. I can't. I didn't write it down, and it's a great line. Something
Well,
about
it's
seeing other
Hamlet.
worlds.
There are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy. It's
Horatio.
when,
Yeah,
yeah, it's when he's
exactly.
talking to Horatio, and yeah,
Hmm.
a great key there because that's just such a cool reference, and this whole kind of a double entendre of, so shut up about your Jesus because he knows a lot more than you do about all of that, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah, it is really well done.
And and I liked the next line, which is I picked it up this time because, and I don't want to give anything away other than just mentioning the line, but the mom is actually looking for Luke, and Stephen says, "Did you check the treehouse? Because he's always there." And she goes, "Oh, you kidder," and walks away. And the next scene is him in the treehouse with Luke.
Hmm.
But I just wanted to reference that because that comes up later on in the series of the treehouse, and the treehouse is really cool. It's like the best treehouse I've ever seen. You know, for that
Yeah.
Dad built for him. You know, because you know the scene is between the boys, and naturally
Hmm.
it's boy stuff. You know, Luke is doing his I don't want any girls in my
No girls
treehouse.
allowed. He-Man Woman Haters Club. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like Spanky and Alfalfa and
exactly.
everything. But all these other homages in it, like you said earlier, the Easter egg of the ET um,
Hmm. Is in
lunchbox.
that scene. Yeah.
But he's drawing these kind of scary pictures.
Hmm.
He's drawing his friend Abigail, which he says is a friend, and then Steve says, "Oh, I had an imaginary friend when I was your age too." And then he also draws this screaming girl, big, huge mouth, big, dark black eyes, and obviously a girl because she's in a dress. She's in like a yellow dress, um, which leads to the next to last and then the final scene.
Grown up Luke.
Grown up Luke and Steve, but
Hmm.
now they're totally different people. Instead of I'm your big brother, well, in a way, I'm still your big brother helping you, but you can tell there's a rift between them, and there's unsaid stuff between these two brothers.
Well, he's stealing stuff from his apartment.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. And
I mean,
instead of
it's pretty blatant.
freaking out, yeah, instead of doing the freaking out, oh my God, you're stealing from me, he like accepts it. He like goes, look, here's $200, but I need my iPad back, but you can keep the camera.
Yeah,
And instead, Luke takes the 200, gives him the iPad, but also gives him the camera, and also
right.
says, this really isn't what you think,
Yeah.
which is such. And this is the thing I want to tie. I'll probably talk about all the way through this. I think Luke's character, the way he's written and the way he's performed and the way his family reacts to him is probably one of the best interpretations of an addict I have ever seen.
Hmm.
It is so honest and scathing at times, but also
Hmm.
so sad and pathetic at times.
Hmm.
And that line of saying, this really isn't what you think it is such an addict's line.
Hmm.
But you find out later, that he's literally telling the truth. It really isn't what you think it is at all. But again, it's that we don't know yet, but we'll find out later.
Yeah, they go back. We won't go in depth, but they go back to this scene again from Luke's perception instead of Stephen's,
Correct.
which is more that nonlinear stuff, but just from a different perception. And that, to me, I just eat that stuff up. It's like dessert to me.
Oh, me too. Me too. And
Yeah.
the layers that he does later on, it's so good because it's not just Luke, it's so many other people that all of this stuff is seen now from a different perspective. Same
Hmm.
scene, same thing, or the scene
Hmm.
either right before or right after. And you see how it motivated these people.
Hmm.
It's like Stephen calling her saying, call me back. I got your message, but I couldn't answer. Call me back. And Nell coming into the room, obviously scared from something. Later on, we find out what she's scared from. You
Yeah.
know, we actually see this whole scene from Luke's perspective, and we see his whole night, and we find out all this other stuff about it. And then it goes to a great ending, in my opinion. The last scene with Steve.
It's the title of the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's in the apartment. He gets a call from his dad at the same time he's talking to Nell, literally in his apartment.
And he says something funny like, why are you trying to scare me? Or something. I can't remember what he says.
Jesus, are you trying to scare me?
Because he didn't expect to see her there.
Right. But she doesn't say anything to him. He's talking to her about, did you see Luke? Did you let me?
Why'd you let him steal my shit?
Yeah. Yeah. And then the phone rings. He goes, it's Dad. I got to get it. I'll tell him, blah, blah, blah. I didn't tell him that I'm not living at home anymore. We don't know what that question is, but he's not living at home with his wife, obviously. Because we skipped over it. There was a scene earlier where Shirley, who's our embodiment of anger, is yelling at Stephen because he's written about the family. He actually wrote about Hill House, and she's going to have no part of it. She's upset about it. She says, if you do this, you know what it means. Meaning, you and I ain't going to be buddy-buddy anymore. It's not, we're going to have a problem if you take money off of our family out of like this, kind of thing. But so his dad, he knows, is coming to San Francisco because he's looking for Nell. And he's actually told Nell to go to Stephen on the phone. And he's talking to his dad, and at the same time, he's putting his stuff down. He's looking over at Nellie, everything else. But his dad says she was lying. She wasn't there. She actually went to the house, and she's dead. And at that time, Stephen turns around. Nell is now in his face, crying. And she screams, and like, in my opinion, the way I thought of it, it was a key for me. She like turned to stone because she got so black and dark, and her eyes were black. And it reminded me of Luke's painting, or Luke's drawing. But also, to me, it reminded me of Doctor Who, the weeping statues, the aliens that are... Do you know that story, that episode, of those episodes of Doctor Who with the...
I don't watch Doctor Who.
Okay, it's so cool. Here's a key for you.
I think she just went from like flesh tone to ghost tone, is how I would describe it.
Well, to me, it struck me as she went almost black and gray. Ghost tone. But to me, immediately, the key that I jumped on was these aliens that are in Doctor Who, and that's my science fiction part, but they're statues. They are weeping statues, crying statues. Some of them are angels. Some of them are just women in, diaphanous gowns or all that. But they can only move when you don't look at them. If you're looking at them, they're frozen. But if you look away for a second, they're suddenly closer to you. Or if you blink, they're closer to you. So the only way to protect yourselves from these aliens killing you is to stare at them. And the minute you don't stare at them, they're closer to you. And when they get close enough to you, they'll kill you. And
wow.
It's creepy. You would love it.
Man.
You would love it because it is a scary freaking... I've only seen 2 episodes with them, but I think they reoccur. But they are really scary. And that's what she reminded me of. She looked like one of the weeping statues. So all you science fiction geeks out there listening, I just gave you a key there. So...
And kudos to you for using the adjective diaphanous, because that's a pretty meaty adjective. So
there you go. So occasionally I'll throw one in.
I kind of got distracted by it.
But that's how the episode ends, is with Stephen literally seeing a ghost, the title kind of thing, falling down, and we go to black, and now suddenly we have to, thank God it's Netflix and we can binge it, or we would have to wait a week, kind of thing. But you're left with so many questions. So that's why I think this is such a really strong pilot. To me, a better pilot than like, what was another series we watched this year?
Castle Rock.
Castle Rock. I thought it had a good pilot. It was okay, but I thought this was a much better one. You know,
This is consistently better than Castle Rock. I mean, Castle Rock had some fantastic episodes, but I don't
mm-hmm.
think there's a bad episode in the bunch with this.
Mm-mm.
No.
Well, and up until this, I would have said, okay, Castle Rock has the episode I would nominate for an Emmy for directing, writing, and acting until I saw this series. And now this series has the episode I would nominate for an Emmy,
Right.
which we'll eventually get to, I'm sure. But you're left with so many questions. You know, what happened that night? Why didn't Nell go back? Who's this bent neck lady? All these characters have flaws, and we don't know why and what happened. And why does Dad say he wants to keep the house? He wants to own the house, but nobody lived there. Why is this Dudley lady so weird? You know, I mean, there's all these questions, which sets us up perfect for, you know, for coming back the next week or the next episode.
Right. And I was going to use Castle Rock as a minor key because there's some great nonlinear perspective in that show as well.
True.
The episode you're talking about is phenomenal, and then like in the following episode, you start seeing the same things from a different perspective as well. And they do that in this show as well. And I'm like, ooh, is this a trend or is this just really good writing? Because I like it, and it's not typical television. I would call it highbrow television.
Cool.
For less,
I would agree.
Better word. Yeah.
And very, very literary because you have to think it through. You can't write that week to week. You have to have that in mind from the beginning of your conception that you're now going to tell the entire scene you just watched like 3 episodes ago from a different perspective and get a totally new angle on it, literally. And both of them do that in great flair and style. If I had to ask you, who was your favorite character in the pilot? And try to think of just the pilot, not the rest of the series.
Is her name Irene? The woman that tells the story at the beginning that's not. Yeah, she's one of my favorites. I mean, I love the cast that continues throughout the show, but that little guest star bit she did is fantastic.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I think I have her written
amazing.
down as Mrs. Walker, so I couldn't remember her name. And you said Irene, but I'm not sure if that's her name either. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think it was Irene and Max. I think was her husband, Max or Mark.
Yeah,
something like that was her.
But
husband.
if you want to go deeper as far as the whole show, Theodora is probably one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. And at first, I thought it was just because she's gorgeous, but then the layers that she plays and the things that she is personal, or the demons she's fighting. Luke ends up being my favorite character. Again, I think just because of this addict portrayal. And
he's great.
I empathize with him so much, and I can't really say now because we're not to that episode yet, but I empathize with him in a couple of scenes so much because, and we haven't said this in this podcast yet, but Nellie and Luke are twins.
Right.
So there's a bond with them that doesn't develop that we don't see a lot of until later on, naturally, because in this one they're separated so much. And we only get literally one scene with Luke.
Yeah, I like Nellie and Luke almost as much as I hate Stephen and Shirley. So Theodora's right there in the middle. So she's the one I can definitely stick with. You know? I mean, not that I hate them. They're really good at what they do. But they're not, great. I mean, they have their faults. Everybody does. But
yeah. Well, and like we said from the beginning, I don't think there's a clunker character in this whole series.
No.
The Dudleys are unique, and the way they're played is great, and the way it ends up. Even the sheriff in the town, who we meet later on in the series, has a great character and is done and is well acted and well written. Really cool. The dad in this. I would have to say if you had asked me the question, I'd have to say probably Hugh is the one that I empathize with the most in the pilot. He's the one that I think, and mostly I think that's because he's the one that shows the most empathy. He's very empathetic to the daughter in the beginning, to Nellie. He comes to rescue Stephen, and then grown up as Timothy Hutton, he obviously is terrified for Nellie and cares about her, and so much so that he literally rushes out to get on a plane to fly across the country. And you don't know why, but you know it's all there. There's this obviously affection for the kids, but terror for them as well. And so he's the one I think I empathize with the most in this episode. But I can't wait to go through the rest of them. I mean, I'm just so.
Well, and that's before I go on to a few little keys. One of the things that impresses me the most about this show, and I told you this when we watched it the first time. I'm watching it because it's horror and it's ghost, but I got totally wrapped up in the soap opera aspect and the drama of this family. I mean, that's the strong. I mean, it's the characters that make this so good. It's my whole thing with if you want to use my zombie analogies, no one gives a shit about a zombie book. There's a million of them out there, but if you don't like the characters in that book, who gives a shit? Zombies don't do much. You need the characters to make the zombies interesting, and it's the same with this. There can be 100 ghosts standing around in that house. I don't give a shit, but I give a shit if they're standing around Luke because I like him.
Well, and I think I think that's a great point. I think it's very interesting that in lesser hands, this could have been a jump scare boogeyman kind of approach to the whole thing, or it could have been, we're just linked on this mystery of the house itself or a one particular aspect of it. But instead, it's all that together with these incredible characters, very well written and extremely well performed. I will be upset if at least one or two of these people do not get nominated for an Emmy this year.
The mother and Theodora are the two that I picked.
Agreed. Well, and I think Shirley goes through a great transformation almost for her. But even the kids, just great performances and so well thought out. And I think it has to, we've got to give kudos to Flanagan because I think it's his story and his storytelling and his casting and direction.
And his love of the source material. I mean, he clearly cares about every single aspect of it.
Yeah. And so this may go down, for me as one of the best adaptations of something ever, even though it's not a literal adaptation of the source material.
No, not at all. Yeah, I could see. I mean, it's inspired by. You could say that. Yeah.
And so keys, you were talking about the names are keys, definitely. The fact that Hill House has a history is going to be a key and is in there. This narrative storytelling flashback kind of thing, similar to the way Castle Rock is.
Exactly. That was another one I had.
Similar to the way, without it being it's itself a mystery, similar to the way Westworld is done, where we're jumping back and forth in time. Even though in Westworld they make it a gimmick. And they don't in this. This is obviously flashbacks and nightmares and everything else, but Westworld makes it so you don't realize.
Or different memories, yeah.
And we talked about some of the other keys. The E.T. reference, Steven Spielberg. What else do you have? Any keys that we haven't hit on?
Well, there's one. Well, first of all, Nell as a little girl in that house reminds me a lot of Carol Ann in Poltergeist. And there is actually a scene where they're all getting in the car and her older sister screams, "What's happening? What's happening?" And I was like, that is directly out of Poltergeist.
And I think that's Theodora.
Kind of was funny.
Yeah.
It's either Theodora or Shirley. Yeah, it's one of the other older girls. Yeah.
That is so true because one of them is screaming, "Where's Mom?" and the other one's screaming, "What's happening?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I just it made me go back in time to Tobe Hooper and Spielberg in the 80s. This is Poltergeist.
Perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
I could see that totally. Even in the way she line interprets some of that stuff. Like he goes, "Yeah, and what did I say about that?" And she goes, dreams spill out, dreams spill out. That's very
Yeah,
Carol Ann,
exactly.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. It's Craig T. Nelson.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Another thing, this is kind of a technique key is what you were saying about the jump scares being off kilter
Hmm.
is something that Wes Craven mastered in Scream.
Hmm.
He kind of turned horror on its ears by making you think there was going to be a jump scare when there really wouldn't be, and then he would throw it in there when, you weren't expecting it, when it wasn't timed.
I would agree with that and push it back further that even on Nightmare on Elm Street, the jump scares in that are so well done
Yeah,
that
yeah.
he's got a knack and a flavor for that. It's not just jumping out of the frame into the frame. It could come from the back, it could come from the side,
Oh my
anywhere, and
God.
it can come from a focus change in the shot itself. So yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's a key. You reminded me of one. I said the weeping statues from Who, but the
Hmm.
first time you see Luke and he's in bed and he has his glasses on, he reminded me of the kid in It that has the big glasses. Which one is it? He's played by Corey Feldman in the movie.
Oh, that was Richie
Oh no, it's The
Tozier.
Stand. It's The Stand, right?
Oh, you're thinking of Stand By Me, maybe?
Yes, Stand by Me. Yes,
And that
because
is Corey Feldman, and I
he
can't
has the
remember his
big
name in that.
glasses. But he has the big thick glasses, and he's always looking around through them. Kind of tilt your head back and look down your nose through your glasses, kind of thing. And
Oh,
that's the way Luke was looking at everything.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know.
Oh, yeah. He reminded me a lot of that kid from A Christmas Story,
Oh
the
yeah,
little
that
blonde
too. I
boy.
could see that
Yeah,
with the horn
yeah.
rimmed glasses. Yeah.
And I can't remember which Corey Feldman movie, but I mean, all those kid movies that Stephen King had in the 80s run together sometimes. I know what you mean,
Oh
though.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. When they all wake up gasping, and Shirley sits up and goes, Nellie's in the red room. I just started going, red room, red room, red room, red room.
Yeah.
I was
Almost.
like,
I
ooh,
could see that.
that cannot be unintentional. Because I don't think there is no red room in the book or the original black and white movie. Obviously, it's black and white. Um, but
Right.
by having a red door, calling it a red room, I'm like, oh, there's a little bit of a tie-in there, I think,
Well,
to
and
The
Red
Shining.
Room wasn't. You may correct me, but wasn't that where the big center of the evil was in Amityville? It was in the Red
It
Room. They
was.
called it the Red Room.
It was a room
So
underneath the stairs, and it was painted red. It was like red brick or something that
right,
had been
right, right,
painted.
right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so there's a key to that as well.
Hmm.
And you just reminded me of another one. Luke reminds me of Danny from The Shining a lot.
Yeah.
That
Hmm.
childish innocence that is actually seeing terrifying things. He
Hmm.
plays really well. So yeah, I think we get a lot of homages or keys, not only in this pilot, but I think we'll explore more because they're all the way through the whole series.
Well, and what's ironic about it, or I don't know if it's ironic because it's probably intentional, is that a lot of these keys are to other ghost movies,
Mm-hmm.
not just
Good
horror
point.
movies. I mean, because The Ring is a ghost movie, The Shining is a ghost movie, um, Poltergeist is a ghost movie.
Yep.
So I have to think some of this is intentional.
Amityville. It's a ghost movie. Yeah. So that's
Exactly. Exactly.
interesting. I hadn't thought of that
Hmm.
because now I'm getting more. I'm getting like, him running with they use that staircase a lot.
Hmm.
And that reminds me of The Shining, the
Yeah.
film The Shining.
Well, just
But
the overall immenseness of the house is reminiscent of The Shining as well, because it's so big.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and I don't think we see it as much in the pilot, no, as we will later on in the series. But
Mhm.
it's not just the house, the grounds, everything. This is a huge place. I mean, I
Yeah.
can only imagine what Hugh lost in paying for it over these X number of years, 15,
Hmm.
20, how many years elapse between that
Yeah.
night and the events of the story. So, but yeah, we'll go
It's
in
got to
that
house a
maybe
lot of
next
ghosts.
time. Yeah,
We're keeping
obviously.
some ghosts in this house. There's a lot of
We ghosted up in here. But yeah. Um,
them.
cool. Well, any final thoughts we have on this? We both obviously love it, and we could talk some more, but we probably
Yeah.
need to let people go.
Yeah,
Or to
yeah,
jump
we
to the
probably
next
should cut
episode.
it short. We're already an hour and a half in. I don't know. I just, we'll talk about the next episode when the next episode comes, and hopefully I won't see the Bentonette lady too many times before that.
Yeah. Good. Awesome. Well, for everybody else, thank you guys for listening. And be sure, like we said at the beginning, be sure to like us, subscribe us, email us, talk to us, send us your thoughts. Did you like Hill House? Do you think it's a great adaptation or not?
Yeah.
And Tim, we'll talk next time when we go into episode 2.